Alaska Insight is supported in part by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by viewers just like you. Thank you.
Anchorage residents may think fire season is a long way off after March snowfalls, but the low snow winter means the recent reprieve could be short-lived, right when people start burning leaves.
Any debris burning that's going on can make a big difference, because if we don't have to worry about human-caused fires, that's usually our early season challenge.
What is the fire season outlook for South Central and the rest of the state, and how can you best keep your property safe from wildfire? We'll learn more right now on Alaska Insight. Alaska's fire season is arriving early this year. Some wildland fire is inevitable. Lightning strikes are a big cause of summer fires. But early in the spring, fires are mostly caused by us. Human-caused fire through leaf and other yard debris burning, sparks from chainsaws or gas-powered weed whips, neglected campfires. Most can be prevented. And tonight, we'll hear from experts about the outlook for fire this year and what we all can do to better prepare to keep ourselves, our property, and our neighbors safe from wildfire. Before we get to that discussion, here are some of the top stories of the week from Alaska Public Media's collaborative statewide news network. The passenger plane that crashed near Nome last month, killing all 10 people on board, was nearly 1,000 pounds overweight, according to a preliminary report from the National Transportation Safety Board released Wednesday. Clint Johnson, the NTSB's Alaska chief, said investigators haven't yet determined why the plane was overweight or what role the weight might have played in the plane's crash. According to the report, the conditions around Nome were icy enough that shortly before the plane crashed, the airport had briefly closed their runway to de-ice it. Investigators wrote in the report that the plane was more than 900 pounds over the maximum takeoff weight for those icy conditions. A final investigation report is expected in 12 to 18 months. Anchorage residents will not vote on a new sales tax this year. That's after the Assembly voted 8-4 on Tuesday night to kill a motion that would have put the issue on ballots for a special election in September. The measure would have put a 3% sales tax on most goods, with 2/3 going to property tax relief and the remaining third going toward capital projects around the city. There would have been an exemption for Anchorage's poorest residents, though a mechanism for tracking that wasn't fully developed. Members cited the complexity of the proposal and the disproportionate effects sales taxes have on low-income residents as reasons for voting down the bill. Assemblymember Felix Rivera, one of the sponsors of the proposal, said during the meeting on Tuesday that he and other members would continue working on a future plan that would include more community input. The state legislature narrowly rejected Governor Mike Dunleavy's executive order to create a cabinet-level state agriculture department. The governor's proposal would have split out the existing Division of Agriculture from the Department of Natural Resources. Dunleavy pitched it as a way to give farmers, ranchers, and other food producers a seat at the cabinet table even after he leaves office. Lawmakers in the largely Democratic coalitions that control the House and Senate said they supported the idea of a state agriculture department, but disagreed with the governor's approach of creating one through an executive order. Dunleavy revised the initial cost estimate for the order after lawmakers expressed skepticism that the state could afford it. The most recent version of the plan was described as cost neutral, but legislators weren't convinced that the department could be cost neutral in the long term. You can find the full version of these and many more stories on our website, alaskapublic.org, or download the Alaska Public Media app on your phone. Now on to our discussion for this evening, the annual fire season. While it may not seem like it in Anchorage right now, South Central Alaska saw an exceptionally low amount of snow this winter, and several inches of March snow can't make up for several months of warm, dry weather. As Alaska Public Media's Madeline Rose reports, the low snow conditions in South Central have scientists and firefighters concerned about an early start to this year's wildfire season.
In early March, the Alaska Division of Forestry and Fire Protection issued an order for an early fire season in many parts of the state. That order went into effect March 17th.
They've declared that fire season is here. And it might seem a little early to actually be getting fires on the ground, but part of what this does is it lets them get training started so that firefighters are ready to go as soon as possible.
Heidi Strader is the Weather Program Manager for the Alaska Interagency Coordination Center, which works to coordinate local, state, and federal firefighting resources. Strader says the concern right now is that dry conditions could lead to an early start to human-caused fires that could tie up resources.
Any debris burning that's going on can make a big difference, because if we don't have to worry about human-caused fires, that's usually our early season challenge. We don't get the lightning until maybe late May or into June.
Even in Anchorage, where new snow offers a temporary reprieve, the risk is still there. Strader says late snow can't make up for an exceptionally dry season.
When you have no snow all winter and you get just a little bit of snow at the end, it doesn't pack the grasses down very well. And one of the early season concerns is that if the grass is still relatively standing upright and well aerated, then fire can move through it very quickly.
While the lack of snow is a concern, Strader says conditions can always change quickly, so Alaskans should be preparing for wildfires regardless of how the winter went. In Anchorage, I'm Madeline Rose.
Joining me tonight to help us better understand the risk for fire this spring and summer is John Glover. John is the Anchorage Fire Department's Wildfire Division Chief, and Norm McDonald is with us. Norm is the Deputy Director of Fire Protection for the Alaska Division of Forestry and Fire Protection. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. John, I want to start with you. We've had some March snow, as we just noted in the package story, but I was out last night observing how quickly southern slopes are becoming bare again. Talk about your level of concern for South Central over the next few weeks, especially.
Well, like Heidi said in her video, the spring season, when we have our grass that's lofted and we're relatively snow-free, poses a pretty significant concern for the potential for fast-moving grass fires within the Anchorage municipality. We have a fair amount of that fuel load within the Anchorage area. The sun's getting to it now on these warm days, and it exposes a lot of it. And combine that with the blowdown that we've had from the winter's windstorm, it's giving us a fair amount of potential for this spring season.
Mm-hmm. Norm, you mentioned that in addition to South Central, there are dry conditions in Southwest Alaska. Describe that region's concerns and what you're seeing there.
Yeah, we have definitely a higher potential for South Central, but if you look into the southern Southwest, there's areas that have been snow-free all winter long. So areas of Dillingham and Lake Clark and that area, there's potential for starts out there as well. So our protection includes South Central, but all of Western Alaska as well. So we've got our eyes on that part of the state.
How do the conditions compare between the Anchorage Bowl, South Central, and that area? Where's the bigger concern here?
For the state's perspective, we have concerns in all of it. We have a responsibility for that large area. But obviously where we have the higher population and the public safety risk, that's where we have our focus this spring. And one of the things we've done is started our fire season earlier to give us a little bit more opportunity to reduce the human-caused fires where possible. Yeah,
we'll talk about that in just a bit. But staying with you, Norm, across the state, what other areas are you watching right now?
We've been tracking the snow depth those conditions since January. Look like over the next couple months. In February, we got our first predictive services report and stating that we'd have a definite potential for April and May higher fire activity. And that really is focused on South Central, southern Southwest, and also southeastern Alaska. So those are the areas we're focusing on for early season, but we're preparing for the interior season, which can change as well, and that's that Fairbanks, Tok Delta corridor. So the early season is definitely the South Central, southern part of the state, but we are preparing for a potentially busy season up north as well.
So the official start of the season is normally April 1st. You moved that up to March 17th. What does that mean? What does that trigger?
Well, for Anchorage, obviously our preparedness and readiness needs to be moved forward, right? So we've initiated all of our wildfire refresher training for the department, line operation personnel, sooner than we typically do. We've been elevating basically our coordination and our interface with our interagency partners, State of Alaska Division of Forestry, who has suppression jurisdiction over the municipality of Anchorage as well, and just really leveling up all of our pre-planning and our messaging to the community as well about preparedness and what they can do right now.
Anything you wanted to add there, or should we?
Yeah, we prepare every year for an early season. We kind of look at it, prepare for the worst and hope for the best. But the March 17th start to fire season really gives us the authority to manage the burn permit program and close that. So if we have a predicted hot, dry, and windy time with these dry fuels, we have the authority now through statute to close open burning. So that's really what it does for the state. It's just another prevention tool to reduce the human-caused fire.
Snow was basically gone in Anchorage in late February and early March. We got a little bit of a reprieve, great for some moisture, get us a little closer to green up. But help us understand why that's really not saving our bacon from the larger concern of fire. What changes when there is such a low amount of snow that makes the fire season so much more dire?
Well, I guess specific to Anchorage and in the municipality and really in South Central Alaska, like Heidi was saying, when we have a significant or an average at least snowfall year, it's beneficial to us because it'll mat down the long grass that we have, and when that gets lofted, or if it never gets compressed in the wintertime, that poses a threat for our light flashy fuels. But additionally, in the timber as well, where we typically have a decent snowpack and then that's shaded out, and that doesn't really become as receptive until later on after we've had our grass season and that gets exposed. We don't have that snow load in the timber. So all of that has the potential to become active earlier. Therefore, our grass fires, which typically would die down significantly when they get into that shaded out timbered moisture area, have the potential to progress through that.
And then I know there's something called the duff layer that's also a concern if it doesn't get enough moisture. Describe that.
In the spring, that really is those surface fuels, those dry, flashy, the grass and the leaves.
Okay, so that's
the primary carrier. The concern we have with an early season is when you stack in a snow-free winter and an early spring, that moves up your drying the duff layer. So when you start stacking in early spring with a dry early summer, and you carry that into a dry late summer, those are the seasons like 2019 where we had Swan Lake and some of the large fires in Mat-Su and Fairbanks. So this is potentially a precursor for a long season. We know we'll have an early spring, but it also just increases that potential for a more significant late season as well.
John.
And with that comes challenging of extinguishment. When our duff layer is dried out, our fires will burn deeper into the ground. So when we have those earlier spring seasons, normally the fire will only burn just below the surface layer, and then it reaches that moist soil, and it's fairly easy to extinguish. When we're drier, if we're in near drought conditions and stuff like that, it will burn significantly deeper. It will take more water, more effort, more persons to actually gain extinguishment on those wildland fires.
Make sure it's really, truly out.
Correct.
Fires in April and May, as we know, are usually human-caused, and of course, as we've been discussing, this year could be much more dire. Talk about the common ways that people unintentionally cause wildfire. Most people aren't trying to do something like that, but what happens? What should they avoid doing?
Well, I think we should always be cautious when we have warm, dry days, right? And we're working out in the woods or even in our lawns or anything near the forested areas. But, potential for starts, at least within the municipality, unattended campfires, people that are trying to recreate that maybe are not as prepared as they should be with water or tools on site, people can nick a rock with their lawnmower, and if it's really, really dry and receptive, that could start a fire as well. So there's lots of potential opportunities for starts. At least in South Central, we don't have burn barrels and things like that we allow within the municipality. But anytime we're out in the woods and there's some potential for that type of situation if we're having campfires or if we're not exercising extreme caution with what we're doing.
Can people get burning permits right now?
We do not have an active burn permit program within the Anchorage municipality, separate from some very special needs, but there isn't one that's active right now.
Well, that's important for folks to know. As you know, when it's nice out and it's springtime, people love to get out there and rake and they want to burn their leaves. Do you encourage them to compost or take them to the woodlot to dispose of this?
Yes, we do, and I think it was just announced today that the Highland Road refuse, so the Solid Waste Services has opened up that location for receiving woody debris on March 31st, and then the Central Transfer Station off Dowling will be open May 1. Our division has partnered with Solid Waste Services to help fund that. It will be free to the public this year, and folks can bring their woody material to that location and dispose of it. So that's a really good opportunity for them to help reduce the fuel loading around their area. And we have all of that information linked on our website at wildfire.muni.org.
We'll link to those things as well.
Outstanding.
You were talking about how a lawnmower can hit a rock and spark a fire. I nearly started a fire a couple of years ago on the back side of my property, clearing some dead grass, thinking, well, I want to get this dead grass out of here so I don't start a fire. But it was so hot and so dry, the sun was so intense that just the weed whip itself, I started to smell smoldering and stopped. But it was a really good reminder that I hate to admit that I didn't have a hose out there because I didn't realize that it was that dry that I could have started a fire just with a weed whip. So when things are really dry, having water close by is so important, as we know. Norm, you mentioned there are 3 layers to fire protection and suppression in an earlier interview: local, state, federal. The Trump administration has repeatedly disparaged FEMA's work, wants to dismantle it. How would that affect the work of especially Recover if there was a large wildfire that destroyed homes and other infrastructure? The Miller's Reach fire in the 90s comes to mind, the Sockeye fire in 2015. And as you were noting earlier, there might be a need for a lot more suppression efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. And in years like this, those are the large fires that we get. And I think just like everybody, we're kind of evaluating and watching that as well to see what their reorganization will look like. So I don't think we have all the answers yet, and I don't think they do either. But I can just speak from the state perspective. We'll be ready to respond to fires. We have our local Homeland Security, that's state, the equivalent of state FEMA. We coordinate with them. We've got meetings with them next week, and the National Guard. So on the state side, it's business as usual, and we're just watching closely on the federal side what some of those impacts might be.
And I believe you said you were just meeting in Fairbanks, is that right, with other wildland
Correct.
Fire agencies, the Department of Interior, U.S. Forest Service, federal agencies. What were the discussions regarding staffing levels for fire surveillance and firefighting?
Yeah, and that's a big part of those meetings is what we have available and timeframes when they'll be available. And I will say for Alaska, I think we are set up pretty well. Both the federal and the state are on track to have everything available on schedule. Our crews will be, our fire crews will be available at the end of April. So we'll have the resources we need in Alaska. I think some of the concerns are nationally if we have to import people to Alaska during a busy season, but we've got a Northwest Compact that includes Canada and the 5 western states that we can call resources on state-to-state agreements. So we're, in the event that there's not as many federal resources available, we're looking at other options to make sure we have the right people, right place, right time if we need them.
For both of you, what do you want property owners to do right now while there is still a little snow on the ground to better prepare for spring and summer and mitigate fuel hazards on their property?
I think for the best thing that the public can do right now is prepare their property. When we're responding to a wildfire incident of significant magnitude or potential, we as responders cannot do in 10 or 20 minutes what a homeowner should have done over the course of a season in preparation for a wildfire event. So
Like
if
move
you're
a cord of wood or something away from the house.
correct, and we're we're limited in our numbers, and the fire dictates where we have to focus our attention on. So anything that the homeowners can do to prepare their property for us, ensure that that combustible material is moved away from the house. Again, on wildfire.muni.org, we have a ton of resources and information that homeowners can go to and prepare and request a FireWise assessment if they would like as well, and someone from the department will come out and assess their property. But the other part of that preparedness is really understanding Ready, Set, Go and what that means. And if we are in a dynamic wildfire environment where we have potential evacuation or homes that are going to be threatened, homeowners need to have a plan. And it's going to be in summertime, kids are going to be home from school, all of that type of stuff, and we need to make for sure that our residents are prepared to leave with the items that they need to be able to survive, their documents and stuff like that. But have their preparedness plan set, pay attention to the weather, sign up for the RAVE app so they can get notifications in the event of emergency, and just be ready with their plan.
And the FireWise program for Anchorage residents, people will come out to their house and help them assess, is that correct?
That is correct. And we're actually revamping that a bit to enable the homeowner to complete some of that assessment on their own. That should be live within the next month or so. And then if a homeowner chooses to do kind of the more digital route, then we would send up a fire crew afterwards to inspect and ensure that it's actually taken care of, and then that would be loaded into our database as a home that has been FireWised. But there are absolutely resources. They can email at wildfire@muni.org and request a FireWise assessment, and we'll send some folks out there to provide that service.
I had that done at my house a few years back, and it was very helpful.
Outstanding.
Yeah, it was fantastic. One of my favorite features of our city is the glorious wooded areas and the trail system, but I know that that's also a risk. And I often, when I'm out on the trails, wonder about the standing dead spruce and a lot of that dead brushy material. I understand that there's some coordinated efforts happening between the state and the municipal fire department to help mitigate those hazards in the city. What's happening on that front?
We've had a partnership with the municipality and Anchorage Fire Department that goes back into the 90s, so it's not a new program, but
Oh, okay. I thought there were some new elements.
No, well, with the creation of with the Johns program, the wildfire program, I think we've got a renewed energy to where we can work together. So we've got some joint funding, state crews and contracts that we'll work together with Anchorage to make sure we have work with John and his staff on creating some fuel breaks around town in some of the higher risk areas.
Mm.
We actually had a meeting about that yesterday, and we're defining the exact locations that we're going to be implementing those hazard fuel reduction projects, and we're off to a really good start, and the State of Alaska Division of Forestry has been a huge help in supporting that.
Those really do two things. Of one, it creates a fuel break, but two, having those firefighting resources working in Anchorage. If there's a new start, they're available to respond from that project site.
When you consider the future and the rapid pace of climate change in Alaska, John, you've had a lot of experience. I think you both were at the LA fires. John, you were at the Lahaina fires in Hawaii in 2023. Fire intensity seems to be different. What are your thoughts about what we'll be looking at for the future of firefighting here as climate change is hitting our state so quickly?
Just for clarity, I was not at the Lahaina fire
so
or
sorry.
the LA fire. I just want to make for sure that we're clear on that. We together responded to a multitude of fires in California, so both northern
Just
and
not
southern
those.
California,
Okay, so
but
sorry.
not that one. But as it relates to kind of what's happening around us and how our fire environment is changing, I believe we're predicted to have a 162% increase over the next 25 years in our burnable acreage from wildland fires. That's a statistic that was recently put out, but our problem's not getting any better. It's getting more challenging. you know, obviously Anchorage, we're nearing the end of March, and we're in a relative fire risk in a lot of areas within South Central. And our season often is now extending until October and later, just in Alaska. And when I started fighting fire, you know, we didn't have seasons like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the threat is real, the potential is real, and you know, as we continue to have people developing in the urban in the interface environment and in the woods, then we're going to continue to have that risk, and we're doing everything we can, coordinating between agencies to be prepared.
All right. Thank you both so much for being here, and thank you for the work that you do on behalf of all of us. It's so critical.
Thank you.
Smokey the Bear was right. Only you can prevent forest fires, especially in the spring. So be careful when you're out doing yard work or clearing brush. Compost what you can and haul other debris to local woodlots if you have access to one. Make sure your backyard fire pit or campfires are watered down and completely out at the end of the evening. Some fire is inevitable, but we can all make a difference in how much of it is caused by people rather than nature. That's it for this edition of Alaska Insight. Visit our website, alaskapublic.org, for breaking news and reports from our partner stations across the state. While you're there, sign up for our free daily digest so you won't miss any of Alaska's top stories of the day. Thanks for joining us this evening. I'm Lori Townsend. Good night.